All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. All right, this is Global News Podcast, and today we are going to go over the American Athletic Conference, and we're going to talk about the Big 12 a little bit, but definitely we want to go over realignment, okay? So, if you already know and you have been watching the NACC sports, and which means college inter uh, national intercollegiate college sports. In other words, college competitive sports. And here you have basketball, football, baseball, soccer, so on and so forth. But today we're going to go over specifically football. But we're going to talk about two conferences, and that is the American Athletic Conference and the Big 12. And the reason why these two came up is because for the past, 8 years, there's been realignments. Basically, you have teams from the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac 12, and which is known as the Power Five. And then you have the Group of Five, which consists of the AAC and the rest of them. Okay, now I would say back in 2000 and I want to say 12, 13, I believe, um, the American Athletic Conference, also formerly known as the Big East, which consisted of mainly basketball schools, private Christian basketball schools, and then they added the University of Houston, and they added um, who else? UCF and some other schools. I don't even remember, but they formed a bigger conference, and during that time, you had some schools break away, like the actually Temple also joined, I believe, but you had schools like Maryland leaving, as well as a couple of more other schools, basically Louisville to the they went to the ACC, I believe. And during that time, there was a lot of shifts, and then the 4 team playoff system began, and so that left uh, a division in the college intercollegiate college sports overall. And during that time, the Athletic American name changed because the Big East did not want to compete with the new members that came into the school or into the conference, the football based schools, like I mentioned before, Temple, the University of Houston, UCF, and other schools. Basically, the goal of Mike Aresco, which was the athletic commissioner for that conference, he wanted to make the conference stronger and not just be a basketball only school. And so he added those football based schools. And for the most part, they did well the first year. I think the University of Connecticut, UConn, won the NCAA tournament that year. And then after that, you had UCF winning the bowl in which they went to, one of the BCS bowl. That's when there was the BCS bowl games, and also the following year, I think the University of Houston went to the Peach Bowl and they defeated Florida State Seminoles. And after that, following, I believe the UCF went again and to another BCS Bowl and won again. So consistently, like I would say, out of the first year, 6 years of existence as a conference, with the new name of American Athletic Conference, AAC, they did well. I think they also got a new TV contract with ESPN, as well as, but during that time, you had a couple of schools leave, like uh, the basically I think it was the seven original schools, basketball only schools that were in the conference, the Big East, wanted to break away and form their own basketball only conference. And when they did that, I think they got a contract with Fox News. I mean, not Fox News, but Fox, a network contract where they would televise their games. They had a media deal there with them, and one of the things I think was discussed is the name. It would be an incentive if they could keep the Big East name, and so that was a back and forth that was going on within the conference at the meetings, and they decided to sell the rights to the name and let the Big East keep the name. I think it was for an amount of like 10 million or something like that. I don't know. It was probably more than that. So those schools were able to form their new basketball only conference with Fox Sports Network TV contract and keep the name Big East. And then the American Athletic Conference were moving forward with a new name they had to come up with. So everyone kind of like, there was a lot of changes going on. Everyone counted them out and was like, yeah, it's nothing now. They were okay when they had all them other schools, but a lot of teams left. Yeah, they're not really that good of a conference. Even though, like I mentioned to you earlier, they had the success in the basketball and football, but they still didn't get the respect from the other schools. So with that being said, you had the schools that were performing well were being looked at, because recently, we're going to jump over to the Big 12. The Big 12 lost two teams that was talked about during this time to the SC. No, wait. SEC. Okay. They Texas and Oklahoma decided to leave the Big 12 and go there. And so that shift left the Big 12 with about 8 teams when they had 10. And they were looking at who could they add to their conference to remain relevant and as a Power 5, as well as compete at that level. And so the schools that they had in mind that they were looking at was in the American Athletic Conference. Of course, there was some independent schools as well. So they looked at 4 schools in particular. They actually went, I think back in 15 or 2017, I think, they went through the American Athletic Conference to have like the schools there apply for membership, and then they were evaluated and looked at. And at that time, they didn't decide to expand at that moment because Texas was still there with Oklahoma. but they needed to have, I guess, a plan B, backup plan for if Texas and Oklahoma was to leave, that they knew who they would add. And I think that's what that was, for. So with that being said, the schools that were looked at or considered as potential schools to join the Big 12 was in the American Athletic Conference. I think it was four that came out on top, and that was Memphis, Temple, UCF. Actually, it was five: USF, University of South Florida, University of Central Florida, Temple University, as well as the University of Houston, and Memphis, the University of Memphis. And out of those, one, two, three, four, five, those had the potential to go to the Big 12. Now, as independents, you had BYU, also considered, and then you had Boise State, who were in I believe, the West Coast Conference or something like that. And out of these, seven schools, they all were looked at as possible candidates for the Big 12. Now, just what just happened? Okay, Texas just left. Texas just left and went to the SEC. And with that being said, it totally changed the concept of sports as we know it for the NCAA. Okay? Now, I just want to throw this in. You know why? Because I believe they need to bring back college football games, sports in general, for game systems. I understand that there was some issues there with playing the players and using the rights of the universities, and they completely just disregarded the whole games, EA Sports, and I just believe that there needs to be something so the students can get paid, because they definitely need the money. The college students, the schools could use the money, they can distribute it to the players, so it could be real simple. Now, I don't know what's the cost to make these games, but let's bring college sports games back, okay? And I believe to make it simple, so you're not dealing with so many other players, I believe you got the games, they're made, okay? The sales are generated, and so much a percentage goes to the NCAA, and they distribute the funds to the universities, and then the universities distribute it to the athletic departments, and then the athletic departments distribute it to the players in a form of a stipend or whatever, however they do that. And that keeps the games going, and you know that they're going to sell, because guess what? There's thousands and thousands of college students, and who wouldn't want to play the games in which they're playing on their free time, unless it affects their performance on the court, so on and so forth, or they get lazy, then that's different. But for the most part, I believe yes, they should bring back the college sports. Now back to it. All right, so you have the University of Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12 to play in the SEC conference. Okay. And so with that being said, they are a very strong conference, the SEC and the ACC. The Big Ten, I don't know, maybe they'll, it seems like, I always thought too, when they did the playoff system, they were saying, expand it to, 8 teams, so on and so forth. I believe 6 is a good number, because it looks like there's just going to end up being 6 major conferences. That's what it looks like, and then it looks like everyone will get a shot at the. I'm sorry, I said six. No, four. It looked like it's going to be four major conferences, and then there'll be like six slots, maybe eight, to where two teams from each conference uh, gets a bid, automatic bid in the playoffs, and then the other teams voted the most wins or whatever record in performance get to play a roundabout game against these players or something like that, or through votes. But um, it seems like there's going to be four major conferences with um, two. I'm sorry, with eight slots, 18 playoff, or eight slots, which a total of 16 teams. So eight slots for two from each conference of the four automatic bids, and then you have the most voted or whatever going into the other slots playing against the team for a championship. I don't know, maybe the experts in that kind of like put together a better playoff system for that, but it looks like it's going to four major conferences: Big Ten, okay, SEC, ACC, and whoever that major fourth conference is like up for grabs. But that's what it looks like. So now that the Big 12 is now with eight teams, now it's time to look at those seven schools in which applied for membership. Well, really, it was more than that, but only seven, I believe, were the finalists. And so they only have two slots, potentially four. And if you expand now, you expand correctly so you don't have to expand later and then cause more, frenzy or realignment frenzy by expanding and expanding. You do it now. And one of the issues was the Big 12 was not able to have a championship game, a true conference championship game because of the way it was formatted. So with this being said, and it would be fun of them to go ahead and expand with enough teams to where they could actually play in the championship. So where does that leave us? We're now here where the Big 12 has to pick. And out of these seven teams, you have Boise State, you have BYU, you have University of Houston, you have University of Memphis, you have University of Central Florida, University of South Florida, and I think Temple University. Who would you pick? Well, clearly they chose to consider the region. Now, if a school from Texas leave as big as the University of Texas, then you want to replace that, and it only made sense to pick the only Texas school who made the final, the finalists, and that would be obviously the University of Houston because it is close. It made sense far as regionally speaking. They have the potential to draw in other, fans and support around Texas in the southern region. So that made sense. Besides, the University of Houston itself has the potential to grow their fan base as well as facilities as well. So that was a almost like a no-brainer. And then, of course, we can talk about Boise State. Boise State has been making out there in Idaho, been making a name for themselves by also competing in football, winning BCS bowl games, or at least making the appearances and playing very competitive sports over there. The only problem I see with that is that it's way in Idaho. Likewise, with BYU being in Utah, I believe that, you know, this puts them even further out west, but regionally, them two teams are close by, and they can play a lot of games there. So, with that being said, those are two strong teams to be added to the Big 12. Actually, three. And then you just need one more. And who would that be out of Temple, USF, UCF? Well, they chose UCF. Now, UCF is a group of five powerhouse, obviously, and basketball and football. They're very competitive. So is U of H. They have the potential to grow as well. The branding is endless with them there, as well as with the University of Houston. And if in Boise State, if you ask me, I believe that the additions of those three schools kind of make up for just one of the schools that left. Boise State, University of Houston, and UCF kind of combined to like a Texas. If you add those three up together, they kind of combine to like a Texas or Oklahoma school, but not both. And then you throw in Boise State, you kind of, it's kind of like, all right, well, two big, powerful school or well-known, popular schools left the Big 12, and you replace them with four. You are able to get a conference championship game in, and you kind of get like 3/4 of what was left by adding those four teams. It kind of, lost a little bit by them two leaving, but it wasn't a bad addition. Now, moving forward for the season 2023-2024 is when we'll start seeing all these teams play in the Big 12. And I believe next year we will see Texas playing in the next season if they hadn't already started preparing for joining the SEC. And so with that being said, we'll wait. We'll look at ESPN and other sports networks to check these teams out. Now, who did the American Athletic Conference replace? Okay, the schools that left. Well, let's look at it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because these schools are going to be interesting to watch. The American Athletic Conference is always going to be like a fun conference to watch. It's like the next best thing in football. So I think you have the Florida Atlantic University, FAU, the University of North Texas. Okay, and then you have Rice, University of Rice University. Then you have University of Texas, El Paso. They went like three teams right there from Texas. And then you have, I think, Alabama, UAB, or what? Auburn. I'm not sure. I think, and then this one, I believe, is, let's see, who is that school there? And then they have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they expanded with 6 schools. Wow, that's major. That's major. So this will be interesting to watch next season for the 2023-2024 season. Now, as I mentioned before, please bring back the college sports games, because this will add a lot of extra media attention to the college sports world, and it will get more people involved, more fans, so on and so forth. And of course, the players will be more motivated when playing. It's just they got to figure something out how to compensate the players for their roles into making themselves known, the schools known, and it's only right to reward these hardworking athletes. We support the athletes over here at Global News Podcast. Yes, we most certainly do. And by the way, just stay tuned. This is our sports version of Global News Podcast, where we bring to you information and we bring to you updates on what is going on in the sports world. And we like college sports, and we're going to talk about college sports. The professional sports, they have their commentators and things like that, but college sports is also not talked about as enough. So we're going to, bring to you college sports here on Global News. Now, thank you for listening in, and join us next time here on Global News. And if you like the video, share it out there for everyone to listen, so they can get an update of what's going on, because there is a lot of changes in college sports. And if you're not paying attention or tuning in, you'll miss something. You'll miss it, and then you'll be like, hey, what happened? I didn't understand that these schools play these schools, or these schools are playing in this conference, or what, why is this? Yeah, just it's a lot going on in college sports. And yeah, so thank y'all for listening in. Till next time, thank y'all, and see y'all next time. Have a great day. All right. Global News Podcast. Bye.